welcome. I wanted to pop on here and do a live really quick about traversing the dimensions. So this is the episode. Hello. This is the podcast episode this week. It's all about traversing the dimensions, and it just dropped today. So if you haven't checked it out yet, highly recommend. It's really freaking good. Hello, everyone. Highly recommend checking out the podcast. Just dropped today, all about traversing the dimensions. And today in the live, we're gonna get into a little bit of what I haven't shared, in the podcast. I'm gonna give you a brief introduction of why do I even know why do I even need to know how to traverse the dimensions? Hi everybody, hi. Why do I need to know how to traverse the dimensions? Why is that even important? I'm just a human, what? Well, traversing the dimensions is actually what got me out of a lot of really, really, really crappy situations in my life. And so being able to tap into different levels of dimension, different levels of being is going to help you to stand more firmly in your power and actually allow yourself to create a level of stability that kind of supports you regardless of what your external world may be going through. So what that looks like is being able to, hey, hold on one second, my cat, stop. He's gonna fuck around and fuck up all the windows. But I'm in Florida, by the way. I'm in Florida. Someone asked that. So being able to allow yourself to kind of move through these different levels of being, these different ways of being, can help you to really get yourself out of kind of karmic cycles, dynamics that aren't really serving you, move you in the direction of your dreams more quickly because you're aware of the conscious creation power that the universe houses. So in the first dimension, I go into every single dimension in the podcast. So if that's something that interests you, I highly recommend going to check out the podcast because that has all that information in there. I'm not really going to talk about that today. What I wanted to talk about today is mostly going to be about duality. And the reason that I want to talk about that is because a lot of people who, obviously we live on the 3D plane, so a lot of people who are physically in their bodies are living in the 2D dimension, and because of that, they're actually suppressing their own conscious creation power. And this was me for a really, really, really long time. So I want to explain to you exactly what living in the second dimension looks like and how you can kind of work your way up so that you can alleviate and find some relief and go towards those higher levels of consciousness so that you can vibrate higher, attract better, and do better ultimately. Because that's really what we're here for. I know that's exactly what you want. So let's do better. We can do it. So the first dimension basically is nothingness. And from nothingness, the second dimension is born. And the second dimension is going to be the dimension of polarity. Now, a lot of people will describe this dimension as the dimension of duality. And the thing about duality and the difference between polarity and duality is really that polarity is more of a generalized overview, whereas duality is very much set in roles. And so maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but there are archetypes and there are different, astrology, those are all different roles that we can use to understand ourselves through the fourth dimension actually, but they're rooted in the second dimension because of duality, because of polarity. And when we begin to understand the nature of polarity, which is really the nature of magnetism, we can begin to understand our own innate power to attract energy to ourselves. And when we begin to wake up to this is the breakthrough point of oh wow, I actually do have power. Oh wow, I actually am the magnet. I actually am the one who is attracting. So when you're living in the second dimension, usually the people that are living in the second dimension are going to be the people who are very much caught up in like right or wrong, is this good or bad, should I do this or that? It's always like one or the other, one or the other, one or the other, one or the other. And when you understand polarity, you understand that there's unity. So there's never one without the other. But a lot of people who are living in duality will see things as good and bad and good and bad and good and bad. And that is actually really valuable. Like sometimes that can be really valuable because that helps you unlock your discernment, helps you to tap into like what you actually want and like how you can actually create that for yourself by deciding more so what you actually want rather than what you don't want. But a lot of people will get trapped in the back and forth of the good and bad, of the oh this or that, oh this or that. And they will lose themselves in going back and forth and create an unstable energy dynamic that kind of just like creates chaos, and it's a very like loose vibration, so it allows in a lot of like energies that you don't necessarily want, simply because you're living in that oscillation factor where it's like not stable in the knowing that there is both. And so what you can do, let me give you a specific example. So say you want a lot of money, right? So everybody wants a lot of money. Say you want a lot of money, and when you think about money, you're thinking about how, okay, this would be a really good way to receive money. This would be a really terrible way to receive money. And then you focus on the fact that like this is terrible way is more likely. Like you see that as more likely. But in reality, both options are possible. It's just that your mind and the constructs of your mind are actually limiting you from unlocking the power of polarity, which is magnetism. And so when you begin to decide, okay, I'm not going to limit myself, I'm going to say, okay, maybe I can make money this way. Maybe I can do it this way. Maybe just like expanding your mind at least a little bit, that brings you into the opposite polarity and helps you to create balance in your reality so that you can balance out those karmic cycles, so that you can create a momentum of change in your reality, so that you can begin to move forward past those past narratives and past constructs that really relate to judgment. And judgment is something that the ego feels. The soul does not feel judgment because the soul knows that everything just is, and there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad, like you're just going, you're just on your path, and it's just like gravy, you're good. But the ego is the one that attaches to the narratives, it's the one that attaches to the archetypes, it's the one that attaches to those certain belief systems, and that's what keeps it intact. And so when you step out of the 2D, what you're really doing is you're stepping out of the ego mind and you're stepping into a higher vibration that allows you to access more creative power. And when you access more creative power, when you channel more creative power through you, that can be really triggering for your physical reality, and it can also be really triggering for yourself. So as you're balancing the polarities, as you're leaning more so in the direction of what you want after leaning in the direction of what you don't want for so long, it can be kind of an uphill battle. But it's not that it's actually hard, it's just that your patterns and your conditioning, which are of the mind, are causing you to want to recreate those past patterns because that's what feels safe. And so moving out of the second dimension and into your true power as a conscious creator into the third, fourth, and fifth dimensions, you're going to feel a sort of like loss, like an ego death. This is like the letting go of certain narratives that are holding you down. And the thing about the dimensions is that you can actually travel through all of them at any point in time. Like your mind, your body, that's the technology for time travel. So you can travel through all of these dimensions at any given point in time. But being aware that when we are born into this reality, we are born into the 2D reality of duality, we can then become conscious of that and use that to our advantage. So being aware that there is that construct of like good and bad, right and wrong, we can use that to the advantage of our mind in saying, okay, this is what I want. So say it's a lot of money. I want a lot of money. It's not necessarily going to be this simple, but say you want a lot of money and you're just like, yeah, I really just want a lot of money. And then your thoughts and your patterns and your behaviors are still over here in the area of lack. So like the duality would be lack and prosperity. And so your energy's still over here, but you're consciously thinking over here. It's going to take a little while for this energy to come over here. And it's going to be like a little bit of a dance. It's going to be like kind of like a resetting of a foundation. And you can actually do that. So you can actually create the space in your mind for the good and bad to become neutralized. And what that does is that actually just shoots you up to the 6th dimension automatically. Because when you step into a space where you're completely neutralized, that's when everything is in flow, in flux. It's living water. It's like consistent and just, so the way that water forms bonds is it's covalent bonds. So they come together and then they go apart, and they come together and they go apart, and they come together and they go apart. And that's kind of how the 6th dimension operates. So when you're in the 2D, when you're in the level of good and bad, you're moving over here, over here, over here, over here, over here, over here. So it's not, but you're split at the same time. Whereas in the 60, you're together and you're going up, and you're just like, whoo, fun. This might sound a little woo-woo to some people, but I honestly, this is like, I can't even deny this truth anymore. So, maybe that makes me crazy, but you know, at least I'm being authentic. At least I'm practicing what I preach. So when you're living in the 2D, the issue isn't that you're in the 2D. It's not the 2nd dimension that's the problem. It's the constructs of the mind. And when you go in and you actually rewrite the narratives of your mind and you learn to look at things in an objective way, this is the teachings of the Buddha. When you learn to look at things in an objective way, you can bring neutralization to the equation, and that actually allows you to see through a neutral lens. So this would be actually the 6th dimension on your body. If you want more information on this, again, go to the podcast episode that just dropped because it has all of this in there. So when you're looking through a neutral lens, when you're looking through a balanced lens, it's less about what is currently in the physical, and it's more about like, okay, well, how am I interpreting it? What is my perception like? What lens am I seeing through? Do I want to see it that way? How can I see it in a way that makes me feel better? You know, because like when you're in the 2D, it's like you almost feel like you're trapped. You almost feel like you're like in a prison of like your mind. You're like, oh, I could do it this way, or I could do it this way, or I could do it this way. And like in that sense, you kind of feel like you have like so much responsibility because there's that aspect of judgment, right? And when you let the judgment fall away, when you learn to kind of just like let that not be part of the equation, when you learn to just follow the impulses instead of fighting like what is right and what is wrong, you just kind of follow the impulses of like, oh, this feels good, this feels good, this feels good. It becomes so much more flowy and just like energetic and alive. And that is the power of the 6th dimension. And you can actually anchor that into the 2nd dimension through the power of your thought. And that is what is going down inside our Infinity and Beyond portal, and also inside the Managing of the Mind course, which you can now buy a la carte, and all of the details are on the website. But this is for someone who is like really interested in learning to master the art of manifesting in the 3D. Even though you have all the mindsets, you know all the things. It's not that you don't know them. It's that you're having a hard time anchoring that down and actually embodying those truths consistently without needing that external validation, without needing, you know, that thing to happen for you to know that you're in flow, to know that you are balanced, to know that you are in a state of unconditional trust with the universe. Because when you're in that state, you're not thinking, oh, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. You're just like, it's over, that feels good, I'm done, that's my decision, period. There's no question, it's just straight intuition. It's just straight like, yeah, I'm going for it, no problem. Because you don't have any doubt, because there's no judgment. And that's the thing about this, about duality. And that's why I like to see the 2nd dimension as polarity, or like masculine and feminine, yin and yang, rather than duality, good and bad, because good and bad are constructs of the mind. Good and bad change from people to people. I could say something's good one day and then 3 days later I'm like, oh no, that's shit. Like, we are always changing our minds. So how can you implement a structure in your 2D reality, which is really your sacral chakra, and really that's like your stability. So how can you implement a sort of like flow between, a dance between the masculine and the feminine, which is the doing and the inaction, which is the excitement and the rest, you know? Like, how can you implement a level of stability for yourself within your existing routines, within your existing mindsets that help you to create a reality where it's not about judgment, where it's not about if you're doing something right or getting an achievement or anything like that, where it's about actually just living in balance, living in complete balance and wholeness with all that is. If you can learn to live from that space rather than a space of, I need to do this because it's good, I need to do this because it's bad, I need this because blah, blah, blah. If you can learn to step out of those mindsets, you can do anything, and you will automatically keep leveling up your light, keep leveling up your vibration, keep leveling up everything about yourself. And people will notice, and you won't have those instances of like, oh, she's terrible, and then, you know, oh my God, she's amazing, because you're not focused on that. That's not where your focus is. And even if you do, you're like, oh shit, I'm balanced. Balance, baby. That's why sometimes, like, as we're stepping into this higher level of consciousness, we can be triggered by things that are bad, and then we can have really, 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 really good feeling situations, because we're learning the art of balance. We're learning the art of polarity. And that's also what comes when you're working with the Wheel of Fortune, which is like the idea of like solstices and working with the energies of the cycle of the earth. So being aware of these cycles, being aware of the existing structures that we have, can help you to form these new structures in your mind, rewrite them in a way that feels good, and introduce higher levels of thought that can be anchored down into these lower dimensions. And if you want more help on this, if you want more guidance on traversing the dimensions, I highly recommend checking out the podcast episode that just dropped. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, literally anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's called The Magical Mad Show. The episode is called Traversing the Dimensions. It's so good. I straight channeled it, and it's just so amazing. So go check it out. Leave a review if you feel called. Follow along if you want to learn more about your energy, learn more about harnessing your energy and working with the elements so that you can become more of a conscious creator, because you deserve it. You deserve to be the creator of your reality. And honestly, you are the creator of your reality. It's just whether or not you're aware of it. So when you introduce these new levels of thought and you let that judgment fall away, when you let that needing the external figure to tell you that you are the one who creates it, you know where to find me. I love you guys. Thank you so much for vibing with me today and hopping on. Thanks for everyone who did hop on. I hope that this was informational, and I hope that you guys liked it. I will see you probably next week for another live, and I look forward to continue growing and expanding our consciousness together. Mahalo.